So good evening, everyone, to the Finance Committee meeting of 9/27/2001. In attendance currently for members, we have Michael Bennett, Cheryl Zarella, Mike O'Brien, and myself, Tom Connolly. We start, I guess, first with acceptance of minutes from the meeting of September 21st. So could I call a motion for that?
So moved.
Second? Okay, and let's see, Mike Bennett?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Mike O'Brien?
Yes.
And myself, Tom Connolly, is a yes. So minutes accepted from the meeting 21st. So, Linda or any line item transfers or fund transfers?
There are none.
Okay, so skip that. On the agenda, we have review of articles for special town meeting, but I'm not sure that's, oh no, sorry, I was looking at the wrong, I'm on the wrong version. There was.
Thank you.
So the principal business for tonight is reorganizing. We're beginning to reorganize our liaisons. Is anyone else getting that feedback?
Yes.
Yes.
So maybe we'll just keep trying to see how it goes. But beginning the process of assigning liaisons for the budget process, Linda distributed earlier to you today the liaison assignments that we had for last year. Typically what they do, or the recommendation, some of the smaller budgets and larger, but you wind up with a larger group, go to folks for whom this is their first year. So I think what I would really ask is that everyone just, if you have initial preferences, voice them. We won't make the assignments until next week's meeting, but just voice kind of things you would have a special preference for. And we'll make sure that those get taken into account. And then next week we can make the assignments sort of officially. So maybe just if we go around the horn, Michael Bennett, any particular preferences that you have for liaisons for next year?
No preference, no.
Okay. Michael O'Brien?
No preference.
Okay. Cheryl?
I'd like to keep mine from last year, if possible.
Okay. Point taken. And let's see. I think that's a way for John to get his preference.
Hey there. I just logged in.
Oh, hey, John.
Hello. Hi.
So last year's Finance Committee liaison appointments were distributed earlier today by Linda. You may not have had the chance to look at them, but we're going to make sort of our official next week at the Finance Committee meeting. So if between now and then, give some thought to specific liaison relationships that you want to take on for next year. Just look through the list, and between now and then, if you've got any expression of wishes, just let me know, and then we'll make it official next week.
All right, great. I'll take a look.
Okay. So next order of business is to vote for the office of clerk to the Finance Committee. Since Joe Vetrano served in that post. Initially, I served in that post for a few months before I took over as chairman. So first, any nominations for the position of clerk, which is mainly to look after our minutes and make sure that when Linda so accurately produces them, that we have someone signing off on them. So any volunteers? Cheryl and I can't do it because we already hold office, so it comes down to Joe, Mike, or Mike. John, Mike, or Mike.
I'll do it if no one else wants it.
Okay, hearing a self-nomination from Mike Bennett. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael. I'll vote. Mike O'Brien?
Yes.
John Smalling?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
And myself, Tom Connolly, is a yes. Michael Bennett, I presume you're voting a yes? So motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, John. It's a promise, Michael. It's pretty light duty, but but it's an important role. So thanks for
You're
taking it
welcome.
on.
It'll work out good if you come in to sign payroll or bills or anything. You can do it all at once.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Wage and per, I don't think we have anything to discuss there this evening. Correct, Charlie? We'll save that for BOS conversation at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, the board's here. Whatever, they're here. So whatever order you want to do things, but as long as we at least get some talking done tonight.
Well, then that's definitely, let's take that as our next order of business and discuss it. I'm not sure where to start.
Well, maybe I guess the first thing would be to say, you're all trying to get this section done in terms of reviewing the possible changes, especially we're really talking about the compensation table, the grade and step table, and have a series of proposals by the end of the calendar year so that you avoid trying to do this work along with the budget process this winter. It doesn't mean there can't be other wage and personnel changes proposed, but this was, all this was basically held over from last spring or this past spring. And there's a lot, there's pressure. I don't mean that pressure in the sense of we didn't get anything done with this. Pressure also in a number of other places in that we know that we're struggling to be competitive both with area communities, those that are larger than us and may have more financial resources, but also possibly our comparable communities in Bristol and Plymouth County. We're also under pressure at the very low end with the Massachusetts minimum wage, which we can legally ignore, believe it or not. It doesn't apply specific to municipalities, but in terms of the marketplace, if we're competing with people going into McDonald's at $15 an hour, we're not offering that, or we're not offering much more than that for people coming into our place of business, in essence, our grade 2s, our grade 4s, et cetera, then we're going to be struggling with recruitment and such. At the high end, it's the same problem. We've made adjustments in a few positions during the last couple of years, but I think it's valid to be looking at what we're paying department heads here in Halifax versus what department heads or their equivalents are making in other communities. Because we're having, as we found out, even with the water superintendent, where we were able to get Bill Lindsay, and that's great, but I think the water department struggled to find someone even at a grade 12, which was a recent change for the water superintendent. And it's one of the reasons why you all and the selectmen and then town meeting voted to move the building maintenance director, for instance, up to grade 14, because we said, we're asking for a very wide variety of skills for Scott Turner's job. And given especially what's happened to construction and such in terms of wage pressure during the pandemic, finding people of Scott's caliber, not for his position, because I hope he doesn't leave anytime soon, but for other positions, we may be running into the same boat. And therefore need to take a look at certainly starting off with grades 6 and 7, but then also effectively looking at what we're doing at grades lower than that, but at grades higher than that.
So Charlie, I completely agree on the competitive need. I mean, it's been very clear. I mean, just because of probably what we're all seeing in the private sector, pressure on minimum wage and the just the sort of labor shortage right now that we contend with, and what we saw at special town meeting for specific positions that we had to take I guess my question is more a product one, like I know how to tackle this in the private sector, but there's an analytical body of work here that comes before making recommendations. So how as finance and board of selectmen traditionally proceed in that kind of consensus building, recommendations building kind of exercise?
Well, I would say, in the past, what had happened was with wage and personnel was not so much, they didn't spend as much time necessarily doing town by town comparisons as they were doing the grading of the positions. I don't know how to put it. I don't know that everybody wants to grade all the positions all over again. That's a possibility, but in essence, all 10 of you, assuming the finance committee, we get back to a full number, would review let's say 40 positions, looking at the job descriptions. We'd have to go back to the various departments, make sure the job descriptions were up to date, and then using the grade and point system that we have available, regrade the positions, just like Wage and Personnel did for Scott's position, for Bill's position, even when we did, even though we don't have one, the police lieutenant position. The other way of handling it, though, is to say that not that the point system necessarily is invalid, but we want to look at the wage levels for the communities again, starting off with our 10 comparable communities, including Halifax, and somehow finding staff time, starting off to regather the data, because the data that was gathered was for fiscal 21. We need to update it even for fiscal 22 for those communities, whether it's Linda, whether it's Irma here in the selectman's office, start making the phone calls, start getting the emails, and start trying. I mean, we're not going to get all the same information from every single community, because not every community has exactly the same positions and such, but at least get an idea that these positions that are in these grades, particularly in grade 6 and grade 7, what do the wages look like for those positions in those other communities? And do we, without changing the grades, change the compensation schedule for those grades? And then, similarly look at from going below that, but also above that.
So I'm hearing we should be asking the department heads to update the job descriptions. Second, we need to decide whether we do another club survey of the surrounding towns. Charlie, do you think the data that was collected last year is sufficiently obsolete that we couldn't be projective in using that data?
I think we could use that data. I mean, we know despite Halifax at this point just doing what we're hoping to be a 1% for everybody, including wage and personnel for the year we're in now, there isn't going to be a major difference. It's not as if some other communities are bumping their wages up 6% and somebody else is at 2%. If anybody's bumped their wages up from fiscal 21 to fiscal 22, it's 2%. One way or the other, it might be 1.5%, it might be 2.5%, and we can project fiscal 21 wages from that and say, okay, someone was earning $20 an hour in fiscal 21. Let's put in 2% for them and say it's 2040 for fiscal 22. And, we know we're going to be in the right ballpark.
Good. Well, that keeps us out of having to do another community survey. So do we ask the department heads just any radical changes in job definitions? They've got to re-update their job descriptions, and then we use that club data to kind of do a job slot matrix and see where everyone lands in those, and then make the decisions about where we're behind the most competitively, and bring that to Board of Selectmen or with Board of Selectmen on that.
Well, I think, nobody's bringing it to anybody because the two committees are working in concert with this. That's why, both of you have roles to play in this.
Yeah.
This is me talking, not the board, obviously. On the job descriptions, the challenge is going to be, if we're reslotting positions, then we're going back to the grade and point system that we've got. Not that we can't use it, but my hope, what we get down to the individual position set, and we start saying, okay, this grade 6 position is worth more than that grade 6 position. I'm not, is that going to be an easier sell than saying to everybody in grade 6, we've reevaluated wage rates for all grade 6 positions. Here's a market average, and the proposal is setting aside points and job descriptions and everything, that the compensation level should be increased by this much, whatever this much is.
Gordon, you have- Gordon?
Thanks, Tom. I did a couple of regradings 2 years ago, and I would say if we're going to regrade to that point system, we need to look at the number of points each grade is assigned as well. I do think you need to look at the job descriptions. I'm not sure that everyone has enough time to take on the responsibility of going through and regrading where we had a consultant in before. But I can say,
Yeah, I agree. I think where I was going was if a job has gotten a radical change in its responsibilities, then we should take that into account. But otherwise, existing grade structure.
okay.
Can I ask, as far as the information that was gathered, was it gathered for all the grades? Or were we just concentrating on 6 and 7?
When I put the question out, I was listing specific positions in grades 6 and 7. I said to Community X, what are your pay rates for these particular positions or their equivalents? So the administrative assistants, for instance, or the secretary 2, any other positions that were in grades 6 and 7. That
Okay, so you didn't do any of the other, like
No.
the higher positions or anything like that? So there's still some work to be done on that.
Yes.
We do have some community survey work to do.
Pardon me?
So we do have some community survey work to do still, since we only collect the data on 6 and 7. Okay. So I guess the question begs, who best did that work? I mean, I'm happy to work on it, Linda, if that's the right way to do it.
Well, and Irma can help by starting to make phone calls and emails also. Basically, to some extent, we're asking Community X, just give us everything. Soup to nuts, what their equivalent grade system is, wage rates, and which positions are in which grades. And we can find out from that, okay, they may or may not have a position that's the equivalent of ours. Okay, fine, that's going to be a blank there. But if we do, we can then start saying, position X here in Halifax, here are the other 9 communities, here's what their wage rates are for those positions.
Okay. Ashley?
My question, I guess, was for Charlie a little bit. I know we talked about the job descriptions and that we can't recreate all of them. We don't have the time or the resources for that. But when we go to these other communities to find out their pay grades and what they're doing, are we also asking them for the job descriptions on those? Because it would be nice to compare to our current job descriptions.
We can't. There's no reason we can't. Again, someone's going to have to review everything because let's say there are 40 positions, give or take, something like that. And then assuming I can, in the best case scenario that I get 9 job descriptions for position X along with ours, then someone's going to have to do the work to compare those 9 versus ours. But there's no reason we can't ask. I mean, maybe you take 2 or 3 of them and say, is this a rough equivalent? Okay, fine. Maybe we don't have to examine all 9 for each position.
Right. I think it would just be good to have a little extra data for some of them. That way, if something comes up and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, why is this position way higher than what we offer? We're not going back to these communities again and then saying, well, what's the job description? If we're going to have Irma asking for these things, it might make sense to just have her ask for both while she's already doing it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it may be also important to note number of students that teachers are expected, are in front of at these during these other communities.
Okay, I'm missing a connection there.
Mike, why would we're not doing anything with respect
We're
to
not
teacher
doing the
salaries. This is just
Okay.
municipal employees.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So
so these are non-union, so police, fire, highway, cemetery, now the water, building maintenance, they're all off the what we have to worry about. We're basically worried about town hall, the council on aging, the library, and a smattering of other positions, like, for instance, recycling coordinator, as an example, or recycling driver. So there's a smattering in other departments, but the 3 buildings I mentioned are the ones that we would concentrate on.
Got it. Let me go ahead and retract that comment.
What would be important to ask though is like the accountant's office, and how many people do you have in the accountant's office? Because my assistant, she does the billing, or some offices, they have one person who's doing the billing, one person who's doing the payroll. So knowing the size of the departments,
Right.
which is sort of like you were saying, Mike, as far as the number of students, but knowing the size of the departments and how the jobs break down is important too, when you're giving
Exactly.
Right.
Mhm.
qualifying them.
Yeah. Chief?
Yeah, I just want to agree with what Sandy says, because what I've found in doing some of my own research is that there's some departments that are utilizing 2 people to do the tasks that we ask of some of our assistants. For example, and it's not 2 full-time positions, obviously, but it's a full-time position and then maybe a 20-hour position or 18-hour position. So I think that's, like Sandy says, we need to know exactly the number of people in those offices. And when you mentioned the job descriptions, some of them are, are pretty lengthy. Would you just want some of the added tasks that have been, because of different state mandates and things that have come down, speaking specifically for the police department, that have added, job responsibilities on that person, that specific changes, or just having a whole job description, which, is 4, 5, 6 pages long.
My personal view is where those can be highlighted out, particularly mandated responsibilities, that'll help us. So even if it's a job description, if we ask the department heads just to provide us with where there have been material changes that we have to think about competitive, that seems to make sense.
Just remember, in terms of the material I'm going to be requesting, or we're going to be requesting from the other communities, we need to get the most number of responses, we need to make it as easy as possible for them. So basically, we need the raw data from them. We'll do the analysis here. So for instance, if I ask someone, if the police department's administrative assistant in town X does X, A, B, C, D, and E, I'm asking for more work from them. What I want, we can look at that ourselves, getting the job description from them.
Right. That's what I meant. For Chief Chavez, we ask our own department to do that legwork, but we're just going to ask for raw data from the other communities.
Exactly.
We want good response.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, I think back from the spreadsheet maybe that I sent you probably about a year and a half ago. It's going to be outdated, but a lot of those questions will be in there. I believe that I did it on every position in the town of Halifax when I presented it for Melinda and Kim. And it did ask for like number of hours that each department works, or, the positions within that department. So it's a little raw, but I think it'll have some of that. It probably just needs some touches up to that.
Okay, I'll look for that.
You might want to ask about the requirements of the job as well.
Did everybody hear Troy?
No, sorry, Troy, say that again.
You might want to look at the requirements of the job too, whether or not you got to have your work experience and who's in the position and what they're paying.
Sure, Troy, I presume that was in the job description, but you're right, it may not be, so we should be asking for that stuff. So timeline, since we keep putting this on the agenda and we're not moving forward. So timeline, could we ask the department heads for job descriptions this week, say by next Monday or the Monday after latest, and we get the community survey out this week? We have that data coming back. What's a reasonable time frame, Charlie, for asking for response?
At least a couple of weeks at this point. Luckily, it's October. It's not December or January.
Right. So if we got our department heads to pull all that stuff back to us next week, and then we ask for maybe just this is on the docket for our either last week in October or first week in November meeting where we can review all of the data, perhaps jointly with BOS.
Okay.
Work?
Yeah, you're not going to be meeting on the 11th because of Columbus Day. I don't know what your schedule is going to be like in October at this point. The Mondays are the 4th.
It's every Monday except for the holiday.
Okay.
For the Columbus Day. If we have the day back on our own job descriptions and the list and have the job slotting matrix with the 40 jobs that we'd be looking at.
I'm hoping it might, I keep thinking of the 8 positions that we have, or 7 or so that we have for the mixed unit. Now it may be closer to 30 than 40. First,
okay.
We've got the list. Maybe I'll put that together.
Okay. So we ask the department heads now, and we get the community survey out. Linda, if you want help, I'm happy to come in and work on that with you one day. If we need to do that, we get it shaped up. Just let me know what you need.
Okay, I'll take a look at everything tomorrow and see what we can figure out.
Okay. Charlie, anything else we should wait for personnel tonight?
No, not on this. Sandy, I may be missing, something, but I think the emphasis, at least for this discussion, was not the entirety of the wage and personnel bylaw, but to deal with the issues, several, would end up all being one on the grade and compensation scales.
Right. So you all received a copy of the pay scale. I sent it to everyone.
Yes.
And I put in all my little analysis, all my little percentages between steps, and truthfully, I mean, I would like to see us say this is the correct range for a step 6, and then split it rather than say, well, we'll start here and then we'll go up 2% or 3% every step. Let's say this is the range, and then split it into, the 6 steps. I think that makes more sense. And the difference between the grades too, and which ones should have more distance between them. But if you look at it, you can tell we've been going like percentages for so many years, and then one year, and it was several years ago, more than several, they felt that the lower steps were being underpaid, so they just gave everyone a quarter more. So that threw the ones in the upper steps off. So it's it needs to be looked at. It really.
So see if we can re-rationalize the grade levels this year, so that there's logical percentage differences grade, and then logical percentage difference or consistent differences step to step.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to see that.
Okay.
And Tom, all while we're doing this, we need to take into account the financial effect of these changes.
Right. Yes, I'm convinced that our industrial base and our population is not going to support, even with these comparable communities, we're not necessarily going to be able to support the competitive levels they are offering. So I'll have to figure out how we best work with that. But we need to do this. There's no reason that we need to pay folks equitably and as competitively as we can.
So,
right, as a constraint here, Gordon, I totally agree with you. Linda?
I just wanted to let you know, actually, I just sent all of you and Charlie and Sandy, but I just realized I'm going to send it over to the selectmen as well. The salary survey from 2019, just so you all have an idea of the spreadsheet I was talking about and some of the things it would ask. And then maybe you can piggyback on that and send me some emails if there are other things that you want us to find out with that information, in conjunction with that information.
Okay, any other questions on this from the committee or the Board of Selectmen? Okay. So we've got our work numbers. We'll try and get this done in the next 4 weeks so that it doesn't hit us at budget season, we hope. So moving on, any correspondence that we need to consider?
The only correspondence you got was an email back from Drew after I had sent him an email just letting him know that, you know, we noticed he missed a few meetings and was he still interested in being on the finance committee, because we know he had expressed before that he might be pulling back from it. And he just said that he was sorry for being unresponsive. He's been getting busy with work and his responsibilities. And given his new schedule, he thought it was going to be best for him to step off the finance committee. And he just wished you all well in the process.
So we take with one hand, give with the other. So we are going to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow to nominate Todd to join the Finance Committee, thinking that we have a full slate, but now we have another vacancy. So hopefully we'll have the board's approval tomorrow for Todd to join us. And then we will have one other vacancy to fill over the next, we'll presume that we're going to have a vacancy when we make our assignments next week to the liaison appointments. But if someone were to join us, then we can hive off some of that work and give to others. But hopefully Todd will be able to join us, and then that'll be the group that serves through this budget season.
You're still trying to reach the veterans office. Okay, I'll try and transfer you again.
So Tom, we can advertise that again with the talent bank form, because I think we've gone through everyone that applied at this point in time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think we have a talent base, so that would be great if we could post the vacancy again. Thanks, Gordon.
I'm busy right now. I'm going to give you the direct line.
So calendar. I think, well, first, any public participation. Sorry, I stepped over that. My apologies. Okay. Then lastly, our calendar, I think it's set for the month of October. We'll meet every Monday evening at 6 via Zoom, with the exception of Columbus Day, October 11th. Everybody concur with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Any other business for this evening? Michael?
I have none.
Oh, Mike O'Brien's just fixing his camera. I thought he was raising his hand. Anything else? Charlie?
I'm all set for now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Maybe a motion to adjourn this evening at 6:33 p.m.
Tom, before you do that, is there someone coming tomorrow night?
Yes, I'll be there at 6:40. That's the appointed time, so I'll be there tomorrow. Gordon, at
All right, thank you.
the time we're given. Sure. So could I have a motion to adjourn?
So, second.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call vote. Mike Bennett,
Yes.
Mike O'Brien,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
and John,
Yes.
and myself, Tom. Motion carries. All adjourned. See you tomorrow evening at Board of Selectmen, and thank you all for this evening.